This cemetery walk is going to be all about women whose fathers served in the Revolutionary War, and they're buried here in Marshall County. They all served very important roles in the county, in the founding of the county, and their families did very important things. Our first presenter is going to be Cora Haynes, presenting about Elizabeth Brownlee Dickson.
I came into the world with an already rich history. My father, James Brownlee, would say, "Elizabeth, I traveled from Scotland on a rickety old boat to come to America. Don't waste any opportunity." He was a smart and dedicated man who was a millwright by trade, building and fixing huge wooden farm machinery. Not only was he a dedicated man, but a soldier as well. My father served his country during the Revolutionary War, fighting with the Pennsylvania Army. When peace finally came, he returned home to my mother, Jane, who had a deep history of her own, coming from Ireland and helping her own family establish Washington County. Together, they raised me and my 10 siblings. As you can imagine, there was never a quiet moment in my house. From hearing my father's war stories to my mother singing the little ones to sleep, the house was full of love and a sense that we were carrying on a beautiful legacy. When I reached my 20s, I left home for Ohio. The world seemed so vast and full of promises and unknowns. It was there where I met Platt Dickson, and in 1803, we were married. Platt had been born in New Jersey, but like many men at the time, he had a restless spirit and a will to make his own way in the world. Together, we raised 8 beautiful children, and eventually our journey brought us further west to Marshall County, Indiana. It was still wild country back then, but to us, it felt like an incredible opportunity to build something all our own. As the years passed, I watched my children grow into the kind people any mother would be proud of. My son, Bayless Platt Dickson, laid out the town that would become Culver, Indiana. He called it Uniontown back then, and he wrote proudly about its location beside Lake Maxentucky, calling it pleasantly situated, surrounded with as good as country as can be found in northern Indiana. For a time, that little town was his dream, and though it later sold, it was his hand that shaped what would become the beginnings of what Culver is today. My son, Hugh Brownlee Dickson, took a different path. He helped found the Marshall County Democrat newspaper in 1855. The paper, through name changes and mergers, would one day become the Plymouth Pilot, the very paper that carries news across the county today. It was 76 years later that when I left this world in 1853, which was a wonderfully long life where I got to see my children grow. I was laid to rest in McDonald or Buckley Cemetery, near Rutherland, close to where my family made our home. Often I think about how far we traveled, not just Platt and I, but our families before that. Their encouraged sailed them across oceans. Our courage carried across the frontier, but we all helped shape this corner of the world, from the mills of Pennsylvania to the towns and newspapers of Marshall County. Courage built it all.
Our next presenter is going to be Olivia Birch, presenting Catherine Logan McDonald.
I like to think back on my history. Born in 1796, I was given the name Catherine Logan. My father, Patrick Logan, had a rich history to share with me, from immigrating from Ireland to the battles he fought in. He used to tell me about his time in the Revolutionary War, where he served in the Virginia Army. I could picture the battle-taught ground he stood on and the comrades in arms that he fought with. He fought at the Battle of Brandywine, Historians say it was the biggest and longest battle of the whole war. 11 hours of fighting and 30,000 men between the two sides. General George Washington himself was there, and the Marquis de Lafayette as well. More than 18,000 of our men were lost, captured, or wounded. Still, my father said it was worth it to stand up for what is right. Knowing so much about my father is a privilege, but my mother, on the other hand, was much more private. Not much is really known about her, but I know that while father was away and fighting for his beliefs, she was there holding our family together. After my hard-fought childhood, I married Daniel McDonald in 1807 in Butler County, Ohio, and became Catherine McDonald. I felt like the luckiest woman alive. We were young, full of love, and dreamed of a large family. And our dreams came true with the 9 children that we had together. They kept us so busy that the days just flew by. Our children were amazing. Our son Thomas married his sweetheart Phoebe and started the Marshall County Democrat newspaper. Some of you folks may now know it as the Pilots. And how special is that? A name that still lives on today. And his new family also made quite a name for themselves, as Thomas's brother-in-law, Bayless Dickson, helped found the town of Culver. Then there was my grandson, also named Daniel after his grandfather. He became a historian and author who wrote the book, A 20th Century History of Marshall County, Indiana. He dug deep into our past and wrote about the first settlers, the native people, and the beginnings of this very place that has grown so much. The book he wrote has a history of its own, being read by so many even after he passed. It makes me so proud that our story didn't vanish throughout the years. Eventually, Daniel's health took a turn, and sadly, 15 years after we married, he passed in 1822, right here in Marshall County, which would have been Rush County at the time of his passing. I became a widow far too soon, but I stayed strong for our children. Later in life, I began to live with my daughter Martha in Culver. She took great care of me in old age. I had lived a full life, 70 years of love, family, and building a legacy that would carry on. I passed away in 1856 and was laid to rest in McDonald or Bucklew Cemetery. It's fun. I didn't leave behind a monument or a book like my grandson. However, I'm still being here, remembered by all of you. Some people think a person can have 2 deaths, one when you pass away and one when people stop remembering you. So, thank you. Thank you for listening to my story and keeping my memory alive.
Our next presenter is going to be Lily Metz, presenting Rachel Logan Houghton.
In 1797, I was brought to this world as Rachel Logan by my mother, Sarah, and father, Patrick. Our history spans back long before I came into consciousness, when my father made the long and difficult journey to America from Ireland. My father found a love for his new country quickly and served bravely in the Virginia Army during the Revolutionary War. He was one of the many men who fought at the Battle of Brandywine, the largest and longest single-day battle of the war. There was nearly 30,000 soldiers on the field that day, serving under General George Washington and Marquis de Lafayette. The fighting with the British lasted over 11 hours, and when it was over, the American troops suffered heavy losses. Though it was a defeat, my father always said it taught them that the road to freedom would never be easy, but it was truly worth the cost. As for my mother, Sarah, historians of your time don't know much about her, but through my eyes, she was caring and kind. She held us through the long nights and showed us what strength and courage looked like. By 1822, I was grown and ready to start a new chapter of my life. So I married my sweetheart, John Houghton, in Fayette County, Indiana. John had been born in England and in 1790 came to America. We lived in Fayette County where he originally settled for 13 wonderful years before we felt the pull towards the frontier. In 1835, we moved north to the newly established Marshall County before it was truly mapped or settled. It was wild and full of promise, with rich soil and plentiful resources. John quickly became involved in his building the new community. When the county's government was organized, he was quick to step up, becoming the county's first treasurer. He served Marshall County for a remarkable 14 years, which is much longer than any other holder of that seat. During this time, John and I had 10 beautiful children. Though one of our babies was lost in infancy, the other 9 grew to adulthood. Our home was full of noise while we worked on building something that one day our children could inherit and call their own. One of my biggest surprises, but also my biggest joys, was when my sister, Catherine Logan McDonald, came to Marshall County. By some turn of fate, we were back together again, and we were 2 of the earliest settlers here in Marshall County. Together, we raised our families while our husbands built a new community from the ground up. I lived the rest of my days here in Marshall County, surrounded by family and the growing life of the land we helped settle. I passed on January 22nd, 1842, at just 48 years old. And only 34 days later, John followed me, on February 26th. Some say it was sorrow that took him, but I think it was love. We came to this place together, built a life, raised our children, and when it was time to rest, we did so, side by side. And though the world has changed so much since those early days, the roots we planted here still hold strong in the soil of Marshall County and the lives that grew from it.
The next presenter is going to be Riley Workman, presenting Clarissa, Olmstead, Pomeroy.
My life started in 1791, on a chilly night in Columbia County, New York. My parents, William and Prudence Olmstead, held me in their arms and just knew my name was Clarissa. My parents were very sure and hardworking people, especially my father. He was a private in the Connecticut line during the Revolutionary War, where he served under William B. Whiting. That service placed him at the Battle of Saratoga. That battle changed everything. It was the first great victory for the Americans, and it gave hope where there had been very little. After Saratoga, even King Louis XVI of France began to believe that we might win our independence. His decision to send aid turned the tide of the war. I was born after all of that, but my father never let us forget what it cost to build this nation. After a childhood of watching my father be the strong man he is, I married a man just as strong as him. Grove Pomeroy and I married in 1810. We bonded over stories that both of our fathers told us about their time at war. Their strength had instilled in us, and we loved that about one another. Grove and I began our married life in Columbia County, and over the next 25 years, we made a home and raised 6 beautiful children. In 1835, Grove and I decided to move west to what was then the edge of civilization, Marshall County, Indiana. The land was wide open and full of promise. Folks say that we were the first permanent settlers in what is now Plymouth, Indiana. According to Daniel McDonald's book, A 20th Century History of Marshall County, I was the first white woman to live here. Of course, I knew this land wasn't empty. The native people had lived here long before us, until they were driven out by the Trail of Death. It is a sorrowful truth that still sits heavy in my heart. Life on the frontier was not easy, but we endured. I felt like I was carrying on the legacy of my ancestors whose names are carved on Plymouth Rock. We built a home, raised our children, and saw our little settlement grow into a real town. Grove passed away 20 years later in 1855. We had a long, happy marriage filled with the laughter of our children. But my children kept my broken heart sealed together with the promise of me seeing their success. I waited 14 more years before I went to see Grove in the afterlife. I was 78 years old. very old for a woman of my time. My son, Grove Jr., had passed just 8 months before I did. But my other children, Hiram, William, Nancy, Prude, and Mark, carried on. Some went farther west to Missouri or California, while others stayed here in Plymouth. Grove Sr. and I now rest in Oak Hill Cemetery, not far from the lands that we once settled. I like to think of the little town that grew from our little homestead. There was so much life in the town that settled alongside us. Children laughing, cars rolling down new roads, and the life in the streets. We came here when there were no roads, just trees, wilderness, and promise. But together, we helped build a home.
We got one more presenter. Our last one is going to be Adriana Flores, presenting Nancy Kidd Seiders.
Before I was Nancy Seiders, I was Nancy Kidd, and my story begins in 1803 in Buckingham County, Virginia. My parents were Elizabeth and Allison Kidd. They were two of the hardest working people I had ever known, and they deeply believed in the country they were helping to build. My father wasn't a soldier in the American Army, but he was a patriot in his own right. Instead of fighting on the battlefield, he did his part by supplying beef to the Virginia troops, feeding the men who fought for our freedom. For that service, he was made an honorary member of the Virginia Army, something he carried with pride for the rest of his life. It wasn't until I was 36 that I got married. I had moved to Ohio where I met Henry Seiders, a kind and steady man who was a farmer by trade. We built our life in Ohio and for 17 years raised our 4 children on the farmland that Henry knew so well. Our years in Ohio were busy ones, full of work and love, but not without sorrow. Our daughter, Rosanna, passed away early in her life, and we never knew the name of the illness that took her from us, but we knew it left an ache in our hearts. In 1856, we packed up our whole lives and moved west to McDonald County, Illinois, where Henry continued his farm work until his passing in 1860. He is buried in Illinois, far from where our story begins. After Henry's death, our son John became the head of our household. By the late 1860s, he was a school teacher in Illinois. I lived with him and my daughters for many years, where he carried the weight of our family. In the mid-1870s, we moved to Plymouth, Indiana. It was there that John made his mark in the world. In 1878, he purchased the Plymouth Republican, one of the town's 2 major newspapers. For a time, he helped shape the voice of the community, and later it would merge with the Plymouth Democrat to become what is known today as the Plymouth Pilot. Those were the good years, but also the hardest. In 1879, my daughter Melinda passed away. Then just 2 years later, I lost Mary as well. In 2 short years, both of my girls were gone, and I had already buried Rosanna long before them. Out of the 4 children, only John remained. John and I leaned on one another through those dark times. He didn't marry until much later, when in 1888 he wed Ella Josephine Hume, a school teacher like himself. They later had a beautiful baby boy, but he passed the same night he was born. That same year, John was appointed postmaster of Plymouth by President Benjamin Harrison. It was a great honor and a proud moment for both of us. By 1890, my time had come. I was 91 years old and I lived a long, full life. My life was, of course, marked by loss and also by love and endurance. John was by my side when I passed. He was the only child that outlived me, and though my heart had known sorrow, it was filled with pride for the man he became. I rest now knowing through him, our family story carried on, through words printed on the pages of the Plymouth newspaper, and through a quiet memory of a mother who never stopped believing in her children.
Can we get another round of applause? for attending today. I think it was a very great presentation. If you have any other questions, feel free to email me. My emails and all the advertisements and stuff. Thank you all for attending.